This video is brought to you by Squarespace.
So the Microsoft Surface Pro X has been available for quite a few weeks now. In fact, my review has been up on Windows Central, but after some more time with it, today we're going to do the video review and I'll tell you the real pros and cons of this device. Stay tuned. All right, before we get to the actual meat of the review, I'm going to give a little confession here. I'm a huge fan of the Surface Pro X. The reason I'm telling you right now is because, well, I think a lot of reviews have come from people who use much more powerful laptops and who really aren't geared for this device, which is sort of a niche market. And I think that's important to point out. It doesn't mean it's a bad device or a wrong device. It just means it needs a specific audience. And I've been using Windows 10 on ARM devices for quite a long time. In fact, if you've been following this channel, I've reviewed quite a few of them. This one is definitely one of my favorites out there, but we'll go through all the hardware and the software and tell you what those limitations are. Like I said, I think for some of you, this is a good device. For a lot of you, though, it isn't, and that's totally okay. All right, let's get to it. All right, let's talk about hardware and design here. So don't blink, this is actually an orange and black device, but that's because I'm using a third-party decal on it. The reason I'm doing that is, well, this is an aluminum chassis and it picks up fingerprints like crazy. So that really bothers me. So I had to go buy a sticker and put it on there. So if that really bothers you, that may be a solution. I would have preferred a platinum design, but it is what it is. Having said that, this is a really beautiful looking device. I think that's why a lot of people are interested in it. It's super thin. It doesn't weigh a lot. It actually weighs about the same as a Surface Pro, which is around 1.7 pounds. That's without the keyboard, of course. You do get a fully articulating kickstand as well as a 13-inch display. And that's worth pointing out because the regular Surface Pro 7 is only a 12.3-inch display, so you do get a larger display on this one. That's because you also get thinner bezels, and it looks really nice. Now, the resolution here is 2880 by 1920, which is a 267 pixel per inch resolution, and it looks really, really nice. Now, this is a better display than the Surface Pros in the sense that it is brighter. It goes to around 450 nits. Now, like my complaints for the rest of the Surface series, those hold here as well. So it is still a very glossy and glare-prone screen. If that bothers you, well, this will be an issue on this device. Also say it doesn't have HDR support, and we can hem and haw about the benefits of HDR in a device, but I would have preferred if this had some sort of Dolby Vision support, as well as a wide color gamut display. Having said that, it is a really good screen. I don't mind using it. Those thin bezels look really nice. You still get a full Windows Hello camera at the top as well, and that is a really good camera. It's 5 megapixel front facing, and it has dual microphones for Skype as well. And I just want to highlight that camera. It is easily the best camera I've ever used on any laptop, and it beats any Surface device out there, even the Surface Pro 7. It is just exceptionally sharp. It looks really, really nice. So if you're going to use this for conference calls, well, this is going to be the best device you can get right now for any PC. Now let's talk about that rear camera. It's 11 megapixel. That's upgraded from an 8 megapixel in the Surface Pro 7. It's a pretty sharp looking camera. It's going to be useful for classrooms and boardrooms where you need to take a shot of something on the wall. In fact, that feature is built right into the camera. It'll reorientate the image. Looks really nice. And when it comes to speakers here, you get 2 front-facing speakers, and they're really good speakers, but they sound different, and it depends how you feel about these. These sound a lot to me like Apple speakers. That is, it has a weird sort of digital effect to them. They're very loud, they're very crisp. They're just different from the Surface Pro 7s and the Surface Laptop and the Surface Book speakers. They're not better or worse, they're just different. Now let's get to the real interesting stuff here. That is the keyboard. So there are 2 keyboard options for this. Neither one of them are cheap. You do get a regular keyboard that's around $145. That doesn't have the cool pen in it. It's just a regular black keyboard. And if you're not going to use the pen, well, that will be your best bet. But if you want the really nice keyboard, the one we're using here, well, it's $270. And the reason for that, one is it is Alcantara, which, you know, some people like. I actually do prefer it, but whatever, just an extra finish on the keyboard. Feels a little bit softer. You also get that new Surface Slim pen, which is built right into that keyboard deck, and holy cow, is that thing awesome. Now this is like a carpenter's pencil, so it's a lot flatter than the old Surface pen. It still has the same 4096 levels of pressure on there, and it's the exact same pen. In fact, you can use any Surface pen on this, and you can use this pen on any Surface device out there. They're all compatible and basically the same. That pen does charge in that deck, which is really nice. It should last hours without charging as well. And he did such an amazing job job here with magnets. We've talked a lot about Microsoft and Surface and hinges. Well, their other really good strength is going to be magnets here. So this has a lot of cool magnets in it. If you even put that pen in the wrong position, it flips around automatically by itself, and it's just super clever. I love using a pen. It's really cool because you can hide the pen when you're not using it, which for me is most of the time. But once in a while I need to sign something, I'm just glad it's there. It's a really genius design. I'm pretty positive we'll see this come to the regular Surface Pro series next year, but for now, only the Surface Pro X has it. And speaking of magnets, Microsoft put some magnets at the bottom of the keyboard here, so when you close it, it stays shut. So I'll point out that small detail because Microsoft does pay attention to those things. A lot of people have been asking for that feature, and well, it is here, so that's pretty clever to have. All right, now let's talk about the controversial stuff here. That is the processor. So this is running the SQ1, which stands for Surface Qualcomm 1. It's a Qualcomm HCX processor that's bumped up to 3 gigahertz. There's also a powerful GPU on this, and yes, you heard that right. This does have a really good GPU on it. Now, all that depends on what you're going to run. So what are the limitations here of a Qualcomm ARM processor? Well, you can run any Windows Store app. That is a Universal Windows Platform UWP app will run just fine on this. Any app recompiled for ARM64, which are becoming more prevalent, will also run natively on this. The limitations will be a 32-bit classic desktop application, which does run. It just runs at an emulated layer, so you take a bit of a performance hit as well as use some more memory. Now, the real limitation is you can't run 64-bit applications. A lot of people are making hay over this, and I actually don't see it as a big deal. So for instance, a lot of Adobe applications don't run on this, and for a lot of people, that's a bummer. I would also say, though, this isn't really a device you're going to edit video on or do heavy photo editing on. If you want to do that, though, there are some really good apps out there. For instance, I use Polar, which is a really good photo editor on the store, and it's basically like Adobe Photoshop. So there are good alternatives out there, but don't forget, this is meant for productivity. We'll talk more a little bit about that later on, but that's going to be the limitation there. Now, having said that, Adobe is going to recompile their apps for ARM64 sometime in the future. I would not buy this device on that prospect, though. Buy this device for what it can do now. And for now, you can't really run Adobe applications. That doesn't bother me, and I use this device every day, but it may bother you. I think there's some good alternatives out there, including video editing apps if you really do want to do that. Now let's talk about some of the other specs here. For RAM, you can get 8 or 16 gigabytes, which is actually kind of nice. A lot of ARM devices only had 4 before, but now you can get 8 gigabytes. It is DDR4X RAM, which is really good. It's fast and it's very power efficient. You also do have a PCIe SSD on this, and that's a big deal because previous devices only had eMMC, which was a lot slower. You can get around 2,000 megabytes per second for read and 800 for write, which is really good. In fact, that's what Surface Laptop and Surface Pro gets. So, and that SSD is actually user upgradable. There's a little slot underneath the kickstand. You can pop it open, and yeah, you can replace it. Now, it's an odd size, but it's not proprietary. You can find these on the internet. They're just not as produced as much as a typical SSD for a laptop, but yeah, you can upgrade the storage on this, so you can buy 256 and eventually get 512 or even 1 terabyte if you want. And under that trapdoor is also where you'll find the SIM card slot. So it's a nano SIM, and there's eSIM built into this as well. In fact, you can activate both of these. So you're going to get 4G LTE. This is not carrier locked. It is not world locked. You can basically launch this anywhere in the world and put a SIM in there, and it will work. It has a world radio in there, and you can switch between an eSIM and a physical SIM, whatever you want. So it's really good for travel. Now let's put this all into context. What is the performance going to be like on this device? So if you're running native apps, that is, you're going to run UWP store apps or ARM64 applications, well, the performance is very good. It is similar to, in fact, sometimes faster than an 8th gen Core i5 from Intel. And it's just really good performance. To put this in perspective, it actually performs better when it's running Win32 emulated apps on this device than a Snapdragon 850 running natively. So they really did make a huge performance jump here between this generation and a Snapdragon 850. Now when it comes to running apps, I had no issues running things. I ran Slack. I'm running a new version of Edge Canary, which is recompiled for ARM64. Firefox also has an ARM64 version of the browser out as well, so you can go download that. And those are going to really perform natively. Now if you want to run Chrome, probably shouldn't run Chrome. It's okay. It will run on here, but you're going to use a lot more of your processor. You're going to use a lot more RAM out there, and it's going to take a hit on your battery life. I don't know why you wouldn't just use Edge Canary at this point, since it's based on Chrome anyway, or the Chromium engine, I should say. You can import all your stuff there, but if you really want the best performance for your browser, make sure you go for Edge Canary for now. Microsoft will be coming out with the full Edge browser sometime in January of 2020. And then everybody will be able to download it as well. But that's going to be your best bet there for performance. Let's talk about heat and battery too. So heat, well, there is no heat for this. There's no fans on this, there's no ventilation, and it doesn't get hot. So end of that story. Now, battery life is a little bit interesting. So it depends on the apps you're going to run. If you're going to run emulated apps, that is Win32 classic applications as your primary ones, well, you only get around 7 hours of battery life, which is not really that great. You're going to push ARM64 and UWP apps, well, you're going to push around 10 hours, give or take a little bit there, depending on the brightness of the display, which really does affect battery life on all laptops. Now, is that good or bad? Compared to other ARM devices, which we're getting 15 hours sometimes, well, this isn't that good. But then obviously Microsoft used a 38 watt-hour battery here. It's much smaller than those other devices. The benefit here is this is super thin. In fact, it's the thinnest Surface they've ever made. And yeah, you do notice that when compared to a Surface Pro 7, this device feels significantly lighter and thinner in the hand. It's just really nice to carry around. But the downside is the battery life is not going to be that good. But I need to point out here, if you really enjoy this form factor, this is going to be the best battery life you're going to get. This gets around 20% more battery than the Surface Pro 7. That's just really important to point out. This does get you all day battery life. Now, if that battery life doesn't impress you, well, you still do get fast charge on this. So you can use the included Surface Connect charger, which is a 65 watt charger. It's a little bit weird. I would have thought it would have been a 45 watt, but no, standard 65 watt charger. You plug that in, you're going to get around 44% of your battery back in 30 minutes. Or around 80% in an hour. So that's actually really, really good. That's basically what the Surface Pro 7 and Surface laptops do as well. So you do get quick charge. Now, there are also 2 USB Type-C ports on this device, and both of those also support charging as well. So you can charge with a phone charger if you wanted to. And you can use a 65 watt Type-C charger to basically recharge your device. It's a really nice option. Speaking of those Type-C ports, they do display out, which is really nice. You can do dual 4K at 60 hertz if you want to. And because you have 2 of them, you can separate them. I should also point out that there's no headphone jack on this device, so that's going to be a kind of a letdown. You do have to use an adapter if you want a 3.5mm headphone jack, or of course you can just use Bluetooth as well.
But before we continue, a quick word from our sponsor. Have you ever wanted to start your own website to kick off that writing career, or maybe launch a business? Squarespace is the all-in-one platform to build a professional website, online store, or portfolio. It's easy to claim a domain, create a custom site that matches your style, and bring your idea to life. The tools are intuitive and easy to use, which means you can have your very own website up and running in no time. Squarespace brings you some incredibly valuable tools like built-in email campaign, e-commerce templates, and precise analytics to better understand your audience. Whether you want a personal website or you're looking to open up a shop, Squarespace has you covered. Check out squarespace.com for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/Windows Central to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain.
All right, let's bring it all in. So the Surface Pro X, well, obviously I like it a lot, and here's why. Battery life on this is actually very good. Now, it's not amazing, so I don't want to oversell it, but compared to the Surface Pro 7, well, it's around 20 to 30% improvement, plus I get LTE built in, and those are the 2 things that really matter to me. Obviously, the design is amazing. I know what you're saying. You wish the Surface Pro 7 had this design, and yeah, it probably will get a similar design later in 2020. Microsoft's doing that to make sure you get this device instead, and I actually think that's kind of smart. But if you really want this design, but with an Intel system, you have to wait till next year. But I love the fit and feel of this device. The keyboard is really nice on this. It's the same keyboard as the Surface Pro, so it's very good for typing. It is 3-stage backlighting, it has a precision trackpad on it. Everything just works well, and you get that cool pen built in. I just love it. Audio is very good. The display is brighter than the Surface Pro 7, so I really like that. You do get an enhanced color mode, which looks excellent. And overall, it's just a really fun device to use, but that's the critical thing here. How do you use this device? So if you're like me, I'm all about productivity. I'm using Microsoft Office, which comes with this built in basically. So I'm using Office all day. I'm using Netflix. I'm using Vudu. I'm using Hulu. I'm using the Edge Canary browser a lot of the time. times, I'm using things like Skype, I'm using GroupMe, I'm using Slack, I'm using Microsoft Teams. So that's what I'm doing with this device all day. Now, I'm not doing photo editing, but when I do, I use Polar and it works just fine. Now, if I want to do more heavy stuff, well, there are other laptops out there. I don't need to do those things though. Sure, I can lug around, say, a Razer Blade 15 or the XPS 15, and I could absolutely just crush it with all those built-in graphics, but I actually rarely ever need to use that stuff, and that's a critical difference here. And what about gaming? Don't buy this if you need to game on it. I'm not saying it's terrible for gaming because it really depends what you're going to do. Actually, older 32-bit games from like Steam will actually run really nice on this. So you want to run something from, say, 5 or 9 years ago, yeah, you can do that. Also, UWP and ARM64 games run really well on this. It's just really nice to use on this device, but that said, Pinball Effects 3 is out and it's not compiled for ARM64 and the performance absolutely sucks. Actually, that app just kind of stinks right now, so I'm not really a big fan of it. But Pinball Effects 2 is awesome on this. So you can game on this, but don't buy it for that. I will say though, Project xCloud from Microsoft is coming out in 2020 for PCs, and they are testing it on the Surface Pro X. They don't expect you to go buy this device to run your Xbox games to stream to it, but it will work on here and it apparently runs very well. So that is technically a solution for some of you out there. But again, I wouldn't buy this device for that purpose. Don't buy this for gaming, buy this because you want to do some work. Now, Panos Panay, the head of Microsoft Surface Division, says that this device is basically meant for tech-forward mobile workers. And that may sound like some weird kind of jargon, but there are a lot of people who just need to be on the road all the time, doing sales or working in Microsoft Office, using Microsoft Teams, or even students who need this kind of device. It's niche, but that's not a bad word. There is a need for niche computing out there. And just because you want this device or you think it looks cool, but you think the performance is bad or doesn't do what you need to, that's actually okay. There are a ton of other devices out there, folks, whether this is Surface Pro 7, Surface Laptop, something from HP, Lenovo, or Dell that will fill the need you're probably looking for. For me though, this is actually the device I really need when I travel, when I'm working on the road. So I'm actually really glad it's here. That said, that price tag is super expensive. It starts at $1,000, and that's without, of course, the keyboard and pen, which you need to pay an extra $280 for. So the price of this is not cheap, but for a lot of people who lean into technology and want the latest out there and something that's kind of crazy, well, this actually fills that need. And just because it's not for you, well, that's okay as well. Overall, though, I'm impressed with the Surface Pro X. I think it's a really great device, but just make sure it's something that you need. Now, I have more information about this in my full review, including all the apps I run on there and the links to those apps. So make sure you go check it out to get a better idea of what I mean. All right, so there's a quick look at the Microsoft Surface Pro X. Now leave me a comment below and tell me what you think of this device and, well, how Microsoft could make it even better. If you want more information about it, go to the description below. We'll have a link to the full written review, which has much more detail in it, of course. Otherwise, if you like this video, give us a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching. Take care, everyone.